Hey everyone, it's Maddie. Welcome back to my channel. And before I begin today's video, for those of you that don't follow me on Beyond Type 1, feel free to follow me on Beyond Type 1. But as most of the time you see my sugars, they're usually pretty good, but there's not, all days are not always good days for me. Sometimes my blood sugar goes really high, and there are some times where I can't control it. I was in CPR class yesterday, and it just so happened that the blood sugars skyrocketed, and I had to take insulin and drink a lot of water to bring them down and keep an eye on how I was feeling. Sometimes you cannot control what happens. Mine was caused from an adrenaline rush. Obviously, we were placed in different situations, like emergency type situations, so that I know how to do this in case something were to happen in my dental profession. But just so you guys know that I don't have perfect blood sugars all the time. I don't think anybody does with type 1 diabetes. You'd drive yourself nuts if that happened all the time. Yeah, I did feel like crap because of the fact that I keep my blood sugars in a fairly tight range. Because I was way out of that tight range, I did feel crappy. My eyes started to dry out. I started feeling kind of tired, but I got myself through it. I only stayed at those levels for a couple hours, and then the insulin finally kicked in. So I am glad that I was able to get through it, and it wasn't for very long. But, like I said, you have to make best of what situations come with diabetes. To those of you that are dealing with a lot of highs or even tons of lows, keep pushing forward, because they're not going to last forever, and it's not going to be there all the darn time. You may be going through a bad time. You may be having other factors that are influencing your blood sugars. Don't let that get to you. We literally are controlling an organ that should be working for us. So don't beat yourself up on it. Just keep striving for your best self. And with that being said, let's jump into today's video. So as you probably can tell by the title of this video, I'm going to be going more into the deeper biochemistry based stuff behind DKA. And I'm going to talk about some of the symptoms I went through with DKA later on. I did do a video briefly on what DKA was for one of my Diabetes Awareness Month series, so if you want to go check that out, it would be under the playlist Diabetes Awareness Month, November 2018. I believe it was day 8 or day 5, something like that. One of those earlier days, so feel free to go check that out. But basically, DKA is something you never want to go through. I went through it at diagnosis, and it damn near killed me, and I'm not lying to you about that. It damn near killed me. I am very lucky to be talking to you right now, and theoretically speaking, I should not be here. I should be in the ground in a casket, or cremated, or however you choose to pursue your death wishes. I should not be here. But, like I said, before I get into this too deep, I'm going to go more into the biochemistry of what happens when you're in DKA, kind of the causes, and why things happen the way they do. So I have a little chart here. I will show you it when we get more down into the actual diagrams, but for now I'm going to kind of just briefly talk about what I have jotted down here. So, for those of you who are newly diagnosed, or for those of you who are diabetics or non-diabetics and have not gone through this, DKA stands for Diabetic Ketoacidosis. And basically this is what happens when your body cannot properly metabolize carbohydrates for energy. And instead it'll resort to fat and protein to be used for energy. There are 3 main groups of like biochemical things that we consume that we can use for energy. There are carbohydrates, which break easiest down into sugars. There are fats and proteins. So once you get into the ketoacidosis, your body can no longer properly use sugar for energy or carbohydrates. And this is because this happens in type 1 diabetics who are newly diagnosed or who have not taken enough insulin. This particular metabolic condition is caused by a lack of insulin, because insulin is the hormone we need in order to get sugar from the bloodstream to be supplied into the tissue so we can properly use sugar and carbohydrates for energy. So without this insulin, without insulin, obviously our body is going to turn down and turn to fat and muscle to break down, because the insulin is allowing the sugar to be used. Well, if there's no insulin, the sugar just keeps building up and building up and building up, and your body thinks it's in a starving state. And when your body thinks it's in a starving state, you will go into ketosis, and meaning your body will think that it needs tons of energy So it'll start breaking apart your fat and your muscle to literally feed your organs, all your organs, including your brain, so that you can continue to function. But the problem is with this type of ketosis, it happens at such a fast rate and in such high quantities with high blood sugars that it causes a whole chaotic mess and can end up killing you. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into the diagrams. So in this diagram, as you can see on the left, I have notes down here for myself, but this is a muscle cell, this is fat cells, and this is your liver. So your liver is responsible for taking care of all your metabolism stuff. So basically, it is controlling how your body breaks down fat and protein. So I'll talk more about the fat first because that's where the ketones come from. So as you guys know, all over your body you have tons of fat cells or adipose tissue. It's also the tissue we inject our insulin into, which we also call subcutaneous tissue. Fat is typically able to be pinched right underneath the skin, anywhere you can basically pinch and pull away, and it's kind of flabby and jello-y like and real soft and light. That is a good indicator of that is fat. So once you're getting into the fat, your fat cells are made up of fatty acids. Pretty obvious stuff. Like I said, I'm not going to go really deep into the whole biochemistry stuff and how the molecules are arranged. I did have to learn this in biochemistry. I am taking a lot of very similar courses to what a RN or a registered nurse would take, just because these are required for me to get into my program, because dentistry and medical are very closely related. But anyways, we had to learn all this, and kind of shockingly, I ended up going through this just a few months later after learning this, so it's kind of crazy that I actually went through it and got to experience all the different things. So you have your fats and your fatty acids. So basically what happens is your body goes, I'm in a starving state. So then your liver basically breaks apart your fat and turns it into fatty acids through a process called fatty acid oxidation or beta oxidation. So once you get these fats kind of broken apart into these smaller molecules, that is then sent to the liver to process further, because you cannot just use these fatty acids for energy. They have to be converted into glucose. So then what happens is, like I said, it gets sent to the liver. The liver will basically break it apart even further, and when the liver breaks apart all these different fatty acids, one of the byproducts is ketones. And ketones obviously are not an abnormal thing. They're a very natural biochemical byproduct. However, when they become dangerously high or in very high quantities, they can cause what is known as metabolic acidosis. And this fatty acid oxidation keeps going and going and going and going to literally give all your organs all this energy. Well, great, your organs can use it, but your bloodstream does not like the excess ketones. Therefore, once you are in metabolic acidosis, your blood pH begins to change. Now, a normal blood pH should be slightly basic. When I'm talking basic, I'm talking about pH scale here. I'll give you a quick rundown of the pH scale if you don't know what that is. The pH scale is a scale that goes from 0 to 14, with 0 being acidic, the most acidic you can get, to 14 being the most basic, and with 7 being neutral. So anything that is less than 7 on the pH scale for most things is considered acidic. If it's at 7, it is neutral, and anything higher than 7 is considered basic. Now, in terms of blood, your blood is slightly basic. Normal blood pH is a very tight range, is 7.35 to 7.45 on the pH scale. So anything less than 7.35 for the blood is considered acidic. My blood pH was 7.05, and every tenth of a percent, your tenth of a number that you go down on the pH scale, so 0.1 every step you go down, that means your blood is going one more time more acidic or basic than what it should be. So my blood went from 7.35 to 7.05, meaning that it decreased by 0.3 on the pH scale, which means my blood was 3 times more acidic than what is normal. They basically, when they do it on like the laboratory results, it couldn't go any further to the left as far as acidity, or any lower on the number. So my blood was at the point of maximum acidity, and that could have nearly killed me too, because basically when your blood becomes super acidic, it becomes like a poison running through your body. And when you've got poison running through your veins, you are not going to feel good, and it is not going to be good for your body or your health or your well-being. Just like with anything else, any people that consumed a toxin or have died via toxins, obviously once those enter your bloodstream, it is going to kill you, or it will kill you eventually. So that is how your body deals with the fats. And because of this metabolic acidosis, with all this extra ketones, the acidity of it will cause nausea, vomiting, stomach upset, stomach pain. Again, it's kind of like when you eat something super acidic, you kind of get that not so nice nauseated feeling in your stomach. Well, that is because of excess acid buildup from the food. Well, this acid comes from the ketones. So when you have so many ketones present in your blood, well, it's going to cause the symptomatology of the nausea, the vomiting, etc. But then you also get so much ketone buildup that it starts to pass through your urine. And because it's passing through your urine, you're going to be urinating a lot. And because you're urinating a lot, you're going to be drinking a lot to replace that lost fluid, which you're basically in a violent state called osmotic diuresis, where your body's viciously being dehydrated, and at the same time you're trying to rehydrate it, but your body keeps being viciously dehydrated as your kidneys are trying to push out those excess ketones, in addition to the high blood sugars, because there's not enough insulin to take care of the sugar in your blood. So your blood sugars are going to be above 300 milligrams per deciliter. Again, I will convert that to millimoles per liter. So you're going to have high blood sugar along with that. And you know when your blood sugar's high, you're peeing a lot because your body's trying to rid of excess glucose. So not only are you ridding of excess glucose, you are ridding of excess ketones. So that's why you're in this vicious state of osmotic diuresis, where you're going to become extremely dehydrated, and you're going to be viciously peeing a lot and drinking to replace that. Peeing it all out and drinking it again. And eventually you'll get to a state too where if there are so many ketones, your lungs will try to expel some of these ketone byproducts through your breath, and you might have a fruity or acetone breath. And the reason why it smells like acetone, and that's because acetone is a ketone. Biochemically, that's how it is arranged. The stuff that is used to remove nail polish is a ketone, biochemically speaking. So that's why oftentimes towards the end of DKA, or the very most severe form, people will have a fruity or acetone-like breath. We've gotten into that. I'll briefly touch on why the blood sugars are so high. So you know it's caused by a lack of insulin, so there's no way for the blood to enter, or the sugar to enter the tissues from the bloodstream, so it just kind of sits in there. Well, also your body knows that you're in a sense of starvation, and because it thinks you're starving, your body will release more glucagon and force your liver to release more stored sugars into the bloodstream, which is going to cause a more huge mess for a type 1 diabetic, because obviously we don't have an appropriate amount of insulin to take care of it. So that is why you'll have increased glucagon hormone, which is going to cause your liver to release more stored sugar, increasing the blood sugars even higher than what they would be. Even though they're high already, it's going to continue to feed that high blood sugar cycle. So that's something else that kind of happens with that. I'm going to talk about the muscle. Now, muscle is the very last thing your body will break down for energy. The first thing your body's going to do is break down carbohydrates. Then it'll break down your fat. Then, at the very last resort, it will break down muscle. Now, muscle, as you can see my little muscle here, is made up of protein, and proteins are made up of amino acids. Like I said, your body cannot just use amino acids for energy, just like it cannot just use fatty acids for energy. It's got to get sent to the liver, and the liver will break it down into glucose. But in this process of breaking apart these amino acids, some of the excess amino acids, or the amino acids that really can't be converted into sugar as well, will pass through your urine. So you're going to have increased protein in your urine, and as your body begins to break down your muscles, you're going to be withering away your muscles. You're going to have muscle atrophy, muscle wasting. So diabetic ketoacidosis has a lot to do with the ketones and the fat, but it also has a lot to do with the muscles, because once you are beginning to break down muscle, your body is in its last resort, and you are probably at near death. Now that I've gotten into the biochemical stuff of this, like I said, I am not a super duper professional medical professional. I am not a medical professional. I am not a doctor. I am not a nurse. I am not a specified healthcare provider that deals with this all the time. But this is what I have learned in biochemistry classes. This is what I've learned from doctors. This is what I've learned from research I have done on my own. So please don't take exactly what I'm saying for granted, but I hope what I said to you makes more sense than maybe what some of you have learned or would not need to really learn all the complicated stuff. So I hope what I said makes sense. Now I'm going to jump into more of the symptoms I went through in DKA. So first of all, I was in DKA only one time, and that was at my diagnosis of type 1 diabetes back on July 22nd, 2018. For those of you that have not gone through diabetic ketoacidosis, congratulations. It is something you do not want to go through. I have never felt so sick in my life. But unfortunately, about a quarter or 1 out of 4 people who are just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes are unfortunately in a state of diabetic ketoacidosis, which is very serious and very life-threatening, especially if it's progressed like mine was. So without jumping into too much of my diagnosis story, I will kind of re-mention some of these things in my diagnosis story once I hit 100 subscribers. I will briefly tell you some of the symptoms I went through with diabetic ketoacidosis. So obviously the first symptom I felt was like the stomach pain. Now I didn't throw up, but my whole entire like GI tract from like my esophagus down through my stomach and my intestines felt like they were on fire. If any of you are like me and like hot stuff like jalapenos, you know if you consume way too many of those, you get that burning feeling from the capsaicin. Well, try that times 10,000. That's what it felt like. Or try it times 1,000,000. It is the most severe, nauseated, on fire feeling that you have ever had. So I definitely had those symptoms. Now, I was obviously peeing a lot and drinking a lot from the high blood sugars and passing excess ketones. I don't remember if I had a fruity breath. I'm not sure if the doctor mentioned anything, but obviously all the lab work showed that I had high ketones in my urine, I believe. If you look on the ketone urine sticks, there's like a dark pink and a dark purple that indicate like really large ketones. Like I was like the largest you could have. I was like at 80 or 160 milligrams per deciliter coming out of my urine, so I had heavy ketones coming out of my urine. Obviously my blood was 3 times more acidic than normal, and I remember having super like dry skin, and I remember like I had like no color to my face. My blood was super duper thick and super dark. It did not look normal. I was not normal at all. And then some other things that I had, a couple nights before I went in to be diagnosed, I had these muscle cramps and these muscle kind of tremors that I couldn't control, and these muscle aches and this super duper fatigued stuff. Well, it turns out I think that was caused from my own body breaking apart my muscle. I had like a lot of protein coming out of my urine. My pee was foamy, and the doctors knew right then and there, once they saw that my pee was foamy, that there was protein coming out of my urine. So my own body was breaking down muscle mass. And I remember going in beforehand, looking at my arms and my calves and going, God, my calves and my arms basically shrunk. What is going on? Well, my body at that point was probably wasting away all the muscle from eating it up for energy. So that's something you don't want to have happen. But those are the main symptoms I went through. And then obviously I was super duper dehydrated. So dehydrated to the point where my kidney filtration rates were not working properly. They were starting to decline. My kidneys were starting to kind of shut down. And basically I had lost 6 liters of fluid down in my body. So I was basically dried up, like a dried up shriveled prune. So they immediately started putting me back full of fluid and dumping me full of insulin because my blood sugar was way above 300. When I was diagnosed, my blood sugar was 513. So if the high blood sugar wouldn't have caused me to go into a coma and kill me, surely my super duper dehydration plus the fact that my body was breaking down muscle would have surely killed me eventually. So the doctors had told me that if I would have came in any later, I would have been dead, or I would have been in a coma. Even an hour later could have made the world of difference for me being completely conscious at that point versus being unconscious and in a coma. people that I have seen or seen diagnosis stories or have heard of some of you sharing on Beyond Type 1, obviously I've seen some of you have way higher blood sugars than 513 milligrams per deciliter or 28.5 millimoles at diagnosis and have survived. So that's why I don't attribute to my high blood sugar to kill me. It could have, but I think what would have killed me would have been the fact that I absolutely had no body fluid left, and the fact that my own body was resorting to muscle mass for energy, what would have surely killed me. And the fact that my kidneys weren't working properly because there was not enough fluid for them to filter properly, and all the excess sugar and all the excess ketones sticking to those vessels in the kidneys would have probably killed me too. So I hope this gives you guys a better understanding of what diabetic ketoacidosis is in the biochemical aspect, and you kind of got to know a little bit more about my personal experience with DKA. I was in severe DKA to the point, like I said, it nearly killed me. Very lucky to be here. Something I never want to go through again, nor do I wish any person to go through. It is very, very sickening. I have never felt so sick in my life. You basically feel like you got ran over by a truck or a vehicle and you can't move, you can't do anything, you just feel like you're just dead. Like, I felt dead to the world, literally. And come to find out, I was at the brink of death. So I hope this gives some light on this. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. We are closing in on 100 subscribers. We are getting there. We are about 75 or 74% of the way there. So keep going with that. Keep continuing to share and subscribe. And I can't wait to share my diagnosis story with you guys. And I'll go maybe more into depth about all the symptoms that led up to DKA with me. Because obviously, as you guys know, DKA is kind of the last resort. That happens when your body does not have enough insulin production occurring. So anyways, I will see you tomorrow for another video. If you want to, you can hit that notification bell next to the subscribe button. That'll give you a notification every time I post a new video, so you can look forward to watching those. And until tomorrow, take care, God bless, be kind, spread positivity, and be thankful, and avoid DKA if you can. It is the worst experience ever. Bye, everyone.